The Irmandiño revolts were two revolts that took place in 15th-century Kingdom of Galicia against attempts by the regional nobility to maintain their rights over the peasantry and the bourgeoisie. The revolts were also part of the larger phenomenon of popular revolts in late medieval Europe caused by the general economic and demographic crises in Europe during the 14th and 15th centuries. Similar rebellions broke out in the Hispanic kingdoms, including the War of the Remontes in Catalonia and the Forania revolts in the Balearic Islands. Background: despite being joined to the Crown of Castile, with the dynastic union of the kingdoms of Leon and Castile in 1037, the Kingdom of Galicia maintained unique features, characterized by an economy which depended heavily on agriculture and a society marked by enormous feudal power, concentrated on both secular and ecclesiastical lords. In addition, Galicia was isolated from the rest of the kingdom due to its mountainous territory and geographical location, a situation which was reinforced politically by the Galician nobility. These lords, the Osorios in Monforte de Lemos and Sarria, the Andrade in Pontedima, the Moscosos in Vimianzo, among others, held excessive power, with which they abused the general rural population. This resentment triggered two uprisings: the Irmandade Fusqueña from 1431 to 1435 and the Grande Guerra Irmandina from 1467 to 1469. Although ultimately unsuccessful, they laid the groundwork for the incorporation of Galicia into the direct administrative control of the Spanish crown, which was beginning to be created by the Catholic monarchs. First revolt. The Irmandade Fusqueña was formed in 1431 on the estates of the lords of Andrade due to the harsh treatment of Nuno Friar Andrade the revolt broke out in Pontedima and Betanzos, and spread to the bishoprics of Lugo, Mondonda and Santiago de Compostela. The revolt was led by a hidalgo of low status, Juaz Order, of A Coruña, who died in the reprisals after the revolt was suppressed in 1435. Second revolt. The Great Irmandiño War broke out in 1467, but the formation of a «general brotherhood» was begun a few years earlier by Alonso de Lanzos with the backing of Henry IV and various municipal councils of A Coruña, Betanzos, Ferrol and Lugo. During the war, the municipal councils became primary actors, giving the conflict the characteristics of a true civil war, rather than just a revolt, as had occurred 3 decades earlier. Several years of bad crops and plagues provoked the popular revolt. According to the testimony of trials after the revolt, the Irmandiños counted with 80,000 troops. Several social classes participated in the organization and direction of the rebellion: peasants, city dwellers, the lower nobility, and even some members of the clergy. The heads of the revolt were made up of hidalgos. Pedro de Osorio led the armies in the center of Galicia, especially in the Compostela region. Alonso de Lanzos directed the war in the north of Galicia, and Diego de Lemos in the southern part of the province of Lugo and the north of the province of Orense. The presence of an avenging and anti-lord mentality in medieval Galicia, which portrayed the great lords as evildoers, made the Irmandiño Wars possible. Opposed to the Irmandiños were the nobles, who had castles and forts, and the heads of the principal churches and monasteries. The Irmandiños destroyed around 130 castles and forts during the 2 years of war. The Lemos, Andrade and Moscoso families were the main targets of the rebels, yet the rebels spared the ecclesiastical authorities. At the start of the war, the nobility fled to Portugal or Castile, but in 1469 Pedro Madrigal began a counter-campaign from Portugal with the backing of other nobles, the kings of Castile and Portugal, and the armed forces of the Archbishop of Santiago de Compostela. The nobler army, which had better equipment, such as the latest arquebuses, took advantage of divisions within the Irmandiño movement and defeated him. The leaders of the rebellion were arrested and executed. Aftermath. The Irmandiño revolts paved the way for the centralization efforts of the Catholic monarchs. 2 decades later, they appointed a governor-captain-general and created an audiencia for Kingdom of Galicia to remove the dispensing of justice from the local lords, and place it under the auspices of the crown. They also ordered that none of the castles destroyed by the Irmandiños be rebuilt, and had the Galician monasteries placed under the authority of their respective Castilian orders. The Catholic monarchs also eliminated or neutralized the powerful lords. In particular, it is possible that Pedro Madrigal, who remained grateful to the King of Portugal and, therefore, supported Joana la Beltraneja in her efforts to gain the crown of Castile against Isabella, was murdered by them in 1486. Another powerful lord, Pero Pardo de Sela, was executed and his lands incorporated into the royal domain. Current commemoration. Every year a large-scale, role-playing event, Irmandiños a Revolta, is financed by the Junta de Galicia to promote historical reenactment. In past years, up to 800 people have participated, making it the largest role-playing event in the world. Bibliography. Devia, Cecilia. La violencia en la edad media. La rebelión irmandiña. Biblioteca de Escrituras Profanas, 18. Vigo. Academia del Hispanismo. ISBN 97884-9691549-7. Mackay, Angus. Spain in the Middle Ages. From Frontier to Empire, 1000 to 1500. New York. St. Martin's Press. ISBN 0-312-74978-3. Payne, Stanley G. A History of Spain and Portugal 1. Madison. University of Wisconsin Press. ISBN 0-299-06270-8. Vicente Vives, Jamie. Approaches to the History of Spain. Berkeley. University of California Press.